Well, good evening. It's great to see all of you today. I hope that you're enjoying your Tuesday evening. My name is Rebecca Valera. If you don't know me, I have a YouTube channel. I live here in McKinney, Texas, and I'm very excited to be talking about some issues that I've been seeing lately in regards to affordability, and here to kind of help shed some light as to what's going on in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. I have a special guest, so here he is.
Hi.
So Sam is a real estate agent in Virginia Beach, Norfolk. No, I can't say Norfolk.
Yeah.
Norfolk. In the Norfolk area.
One with the fall. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is going to be kind of shedding some light because he was actually around when the 2008 crisis happened. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But before we start, I kind of wanted to start with a news article I wanted to share with you that I found recently. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick. Kind of move us to the side. And sorry, this is live, Chrome tab. We want to look at this one because this is very relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. So this is from Kiplinger. It says, home buyers loving the suburbs again. Urban condos found little love as telecommuting home buyers bid up prices far from city centers. So it says, it goes on to say, for years, buyers have been flocking to cities and close-in suburbs, seeking a boost in quality of life by shortening their commutes and gaining easy access to restaurants and cultural events. The pandemic turned that trend on its head, which is definitely true. Last year, a number of city dwellers migrated to the suburbs and exurbs to get more space, both indoors and outdoors. Gaining the freedom to telecommute gave more buyers the ability to move from urban centers. A survey from the American Institute of CPAs found that 42% of employed Americans worked remotely at some point during the pandemic. Companies such as Twitter, REI, Square have announced plans to let employees work remotely indefinitely. And I think that's also what's driving pricing and all of that type of thing too. And then it says, let me kind of, also, this is also neat to see. Meanwhile, condo listings in urban cities are sitting on the market, says Larry Priggle, co-owner of the Priggle Brothers Associates real estate team at Compass. A lot of buyers don't want to live in close proximity to other people right now, which totally makes sense. The trend has been a boon to suburban. The trend has been a boon to suburban and small city sellers. Dana and Graham Gilley sold their 4-bedroom house in Carmel, Indiana, a city with a population about 100,000 people north of Indianapolis, for $25,000 above their list price in a single day in December. They received 5 offers, including one from a buyer who didn't see the home in person before submitting the bid. This was the offer that they had accepted. The Gilleys, who have 3 children, ages 8, 6, and 4, upsized from 1,900 square feet to 2,900 square feet house that's just around the corner. We wanted to stay in the same school district, and we'd gotten to the point where we just needed more space. So let me stop sharing that piece for a second, and let's just kind of all of those things, all of those trends, that's really what I've been seeing here in the Dallas area. All the condos, all the townhomes, they're starting to sit, just like they were saying in the article. I've been seeing that firsthand here. And then I have seen more of a migration to people from the city out into the suburbs. Affordability does play a role into that. But what are your thoughts on that article?
So that's indicative of a lot of things that are happening here. But it's interesting because the reasons why I feel like people are leaving the downtown or the
That was me.
the close quarters kind of mindset is another reason why I encourage somebody to be aggressive when they're getting a house, because, you know, the mindset it seems that people are taking is this long-term mindset of, you know, I'm not buying a house for 2 years. I'm buying this for 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, or however long. This could be a forever house I didn't expect to have or to have bought right now. And so, um, you know, it's funny that the conversation hasn't gone over to renting. It's gone to like, what's the best thing I can buy? Because again, the rates are so low. So as far as affordability goes, I do think this is going to play a big part in the next year or two as far as prices go. I still think, because people are looking at this as a long-term purchase, they're willing to spend the extra $5,000 to get the house that they want, or $10,000 or whatever. And so I could see, as rates stay low,
Yeah.
the number is climbing because of that exact phenomenon. And I get it. I mean, it's tough here because for anybody who's familiar with this area, Virginia Beach is kind of landlocked on one side and then water on the other. So you've got a river, you've several rivers, you got the ocean, but you can't really build out very far other than going down south. So there's not a whole lot of land left, and even the city's trying to kind of preserve a lot of country that's there. So the building, I'm not saying it's slowed down significantly, but I'd say it's harder to get a house built based on the land that's available. So even then, like the people demanding, like the demands of people, like you said, and the article says, going further out into the suburbs, further out. I mean, it's still doable here, but who's to say in 7 to 10 years how easy it will be? So the scarcity of land could play a factor into this over time. And hey, I mean, again, that further feeds the prices too. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot here, but I understand why people are being aggressive, and I understand how that can also scare some people in being concerned. Like, am I going to lose a chance to get a house? Period. I get that too. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about how they're looking for more of a long-term home versus just, I'm going to stay here for a couple of years and then upgrade to the next one, which, I mean, in some instances, that's all that people can do, especially if they're in those lower price points. As their family grows and they need more space, they're going to do exactly what this couple did, maybe stay in the same area and just swap square footage. So that way they have more space. Right. But I think with the interest rate so low, them wanting to make a purchase in the next, 2 to 3 years is going to be difficult, just because they want to keep that low interest rate, right? It's like you got it so low and you want to keep it, right? And you want to hang on to that. Yep. So I think that's another reason why that's more of an issue, more or less an issue for, I think people are being a little bit more picky too about what their decision is, where their choices are. But it's difficult because it's a fast-paced, market. And that the other thing too that my husband and I have thought about doing here in the near future, just because interest rates are so low, and you mentioned land, we're thinking about purchasing some land and then holding it, sitting on it, and then building down the road, maybe more of like a custom home. Yeah. But we don't want to pay a premium for interest on the land. So why not do it now if we have the financing to do something like that, and then build at a later time when we have the rest of the money for, our dream home, essentially. Yeah. Depending on if and every community is going to be different as far as what they're going to allow you to, if you purchase the land, you have to build within so many years in some instances, or if you purchase the land, you can wait as long as you want and resell the lot if you want. So, but yeah, land is going to get, I think, more and more scarce as we continue growing and building. And builders are working like gangbusters here. I mean, you turn around the corner and there's, another neighborhood, another community, and then they're starting phase 3 and they're starting phase 4 and we got phase 5. So there's just a lot of growth not only on I think especially on the northern borders of some of these big metro areas and big metro cities, we're seeing more of an explosion outward because you can get a little bit more on the north side of town than you can a little bit closer to the city. So I think that's another factor.
Are people, not to dovetail, but are people when they're moving to all around there? Are there options north, south, east, and west? Because right here, I'm not used to that. Because here, again, you can't go west or east. You got ocean. You can't go really north. It's hard. So there's just
Yeah.
south is different states. So there's not a whole lot of spots to go.
Well, as far as expansion goes, the more desirable, popular direction to go is actually north. There has been some expansion in building further to the south, and I was reading another article that's saying Mesquite is getting popular again. Mesquite is probably one of the most affordable suburbs in Dallas-Fort Worth, but there are some other things too, like I believe the schools aren't rated as well as some of the other schools that are kind of hindering that. I know that there are some pockets and areas of Mesquite and as well as Arlington that are more affordable, but you have more rentals in those areas, like investors buying up those properties, changing those into rental properties and investment properties. So it becomes more of a like apartment neighborhood, so to speak, which is probably not the best situation in every case. I mean, it's good to have some homeowners in that subdivision, but in general, most renters who are renting a house may or may not take care of the property, or maybe they feel like the landlord is going to take care and manage the property. So it just kind of really comes out to expectation and what people are expecting or anticipating.
Okay.
So
yeah. Do you have a lot of people that when you work with people that are coming from out of state, do they expect a certain type of house and setting and then are surprised by either what they can or can't get?
I would say they are surprised, at least in the Dallas area, as to how much they can get for their money, because we used to see homes that were under $200,000, and that would be the market that would go quicker. Yeah. But now the $200,000 price range and to the $200,000 to $300,000 price range has become that under 100. I mean, it's just become that way because of supply and demand and affordability too, with interest rates going down and people can afford more. Yep. That helps to a certain degree. But if you could only afford, let's say that, 10 months ago, you could only afford $250 and now you can afford $260 because the interest rates have gone down a little bit, So I think that's another thing that, even though the illusion is that you're getting a low interest rate and you're able to afford more, but the reality is that you are the prices have gone up like exponentially. And I know that you were talking a little bit about prices in your community going up. What have you seen as far as increases?
So Virginia Beach is a wacky one. So like I have clients that came here from Ohio just recently. They're coming here in about a week and a half, and they were shocked at what you couldn't get in Virginia Beach. And so average sales prices here are in the, I mean, it depends on what your numbers are, what numbers you use, but a 4-bedroom house in school district, checked all the boxes, kind of house, 2,700 square feet, you're getting in the 400 range. I mean, you can get them cheaper, you can get them more expensive, but 400 is not crazy at all. And 400 in a lot of places can get you a ton. I'm learning after talking to so many people, and that's just not the way it is here. You get what you want, sort of, but you still are sacrificing some things there. So in that 400 house last year was 355, 360. So I'd say 10% in the last year is
about what you've seen.
Pretty accurate. Okay. And again, I haven't had someone that I helped them, they closed in September, had to resell. They're like, hey, we want to go back to our home state. We think this was a bad idea. Let's start all over again. Well, they literally sold their house 2.5 months later and broke even after all the costs. They bought it for 325, I think, and sold for 345. And 2.5 months, like almost 3 months. So things are happening quickly here, and in off season, which I think is important to know, because a lot of things usually halt or slow down in November, December
because of your snow, right?
Yeah, right. We got 2 inches yesterday. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we got 2 inches. That was the first snow we got in 2.5 years. But like, people just, once it hits Thanksgiving, like it is anywhere, like things slow down.
Yeah.
Not here, because people that couldn't find a house in September or October were still looking in November and December. The problem is that people weren't listing their houses. So whenever one came up, it's like, boom. And then there drives up your appraisals or your comps for the next house on the market. So so that doesn't normally happen in December. And at this point, it's been happening, and it's still happening in January. And I mean, house hits the market now. If you're not on it in the first couple hours, you're not going to see the house in some cases. So again, all this further driving the prices higher. So again, I keep talking about the long-term benefits of buying something to stay in, which, that seems to be the basis. Like, buying something to sell in a year, while you might actually do well or might be okay, it is a very risky proposition if interest rates go up.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I mean, I still think if interest rates, it just really depends on how much they go up, I think, as to what factor or role that's going to play in the next years. But I don't really see it slowing down because of more of the demand issue. There's such a strong demand that's driving the housing market right now in all areas. It's not just Dallas. It's not just Virginia. Or Virginia Beach. All areas are seeing very similar trends. Now, Sawshek has a question. He says, hello, do cash buyers have any advantage over financed buyers that offer over the asking price? We're looking in the 375, 425 range. Should cash buyers also offer over the list price? So do you want to start? You want to answer that, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll go. I think yeah. Cash is still a very strong. I mean, I know some agents here that are just furious when, in that price range here, got cash, you're gonna be, if there are 8 offers, you're gonna be in the top 2 or 3, because most are gonna be financed, and then a lot of them are going to try and offer over asking price. And when you got a financed offer way over asking price, sometimes if you're not willing to guarantee that difference in appraisal price, if there's an appraisal problem, then it's like not even worth the paper it's written on. So, sometimes offers go too high and you're almost doing yourself a disservice. So my point is that all those financed people can duke it out. If you've got cash, I still suggest people even going a little bit over asking price in this market with cash, and not leaning on the cash weapon too heavily, because you can save money and not go as high as somebody else. But if you go too low, it's still worth it for a buyer, or for a seller, to still take the finance offer if it's that much of a difference. So, still kind of judging the house and figuring that out and seeing how much it's worth it to you to go after it. But I for sure definitely say it's I mean, you don't have to get an appraisal. You don't have to wait a month to close. So definitely in your favor, but I wouldn't take that and run with it and assume that they'll just take anything you offer them, because I think you'll get bit.
Yeah. As far as here in the Dallas area and some other hot markets like Austin, it's pretty, Austin's just crazy. I'm just going to label it as crazy town. Austin is crazy town when it comes to the housing market. I've been chatting with a couple of realtors in that specific area, and yeah, I'm just not even going to talk about it. It's so crazy. Dallas is a little bit more moderate, more conservative, but I have been seeing on very high demand properties, they've gone over as much as $30,000. And this one was financing, but to Shashek's question, they were financing, but they waived the appraisal. So no matter what the appraisal came in, they were going to actually meet the seller at that price. The letters also have been advantageous in certain situations when you're in multiple offers to, especially if the home is not owned by an investor. And usually I can tell whether a home is owned by an investor or not. If it's a family or an elderly, woman or a veteran or whoever the owner might be, writing a letter, letting them know that you are wanting to raise your family, that kind of a gush letter, not doing it out of spite, but just really trying to get the seller to see that you really want this house and that you are wanting to work with them, just kind of puts that extra effort, I think, on the table when it comes to that kind of thing. But there are other ways to tweak your offer and to have really great terms that will set you apart in your offer, especially if you're cash. I mean, going above, but not too much. And that's usually when I look at the neighborhood data. So I'll actually look at the data for the neighborhood and say, okay, the most that someone has gone over in this neighborhood has been 105%. So we'll take the list price, whatever it is. Let's say it's $300,000 and we multiply that by 105%. That gives us an idea, or if you multiply it by 5% and then add it to 300, same thing. So when you do that, it'll give you a rough idea as to where you really need to fall in order to compete with other people, because I would assume that those other people, cash or financing, when you're dealing with financing that's waiving the appraisal completely, to me it's the same as cash, as long as the seller is willing to stick it out. And especially too, if that financed offer has a very short option window, then for sure, I mean, it's going to beat out cash. I've helped my clients beat out cash offers just because we had really great terms and we knew what we were doing when we're competing against 10 or 12 other people. Yeah, so
I agree with all that. Actually, if I can add something too, that's to me where a good lender comes into play, because if a lender can express themselves as being someone who's on their game and can respond quickly and can communicate well with the seller, that is actually even a nice phone call from the lender, which is shocking to me. I always assumed that, most people would do it. No, lenders don't seem to call listing agents very much, but if you're out there and you want your offer accepted, I mean, having your lender call, and your agent can work on this obviously, but having your lender call to just confirm that you guys are ready to go, qualified, it's crazy. Like I had one, I think there were probably like 6 or 7 offers, and they took we had a contingent offer, which I would have never even recommended in this market. They took our contingent offer over an equal offer that wasn't contingent because they liked how we presented the offer.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying just write contingent offers and it'll be fine, but I'm saying that I agree with you that
who you hire makes a difference. Who you hire makes a huge difference. Yeah. And not only from the real estate perspective, but also through the lending perspective, making sure that you're hiring a good lender. I would not recommend Quicken Loans or anyone, that you can't communicate with on Saturday and Sunday. I think that's very important because that's when you're out usually seeing houses and properties. That's usually when the deadlines are. And if your lender is very accessible, that's a good thing. 100%. All right, we got some more questions, comments too. So Michelle was saying that I could have gotten close to dream house with $350,000 last year. Yes, that's very accurate. Now that house would be $450,000. I don't know if it'd be that much, but I'm sure it depends on what your dream house was and where it was located, for sure.
Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah. And then Parush has a good question. Parush. He says, house price versus interest rate, which is more important in reality? That's a great question. You want to start?
Yeah, I say it depends. I say it depends on how long you want to keep your house. Um, if if you're buying something speculatively and you're not going to be keeping it very long, uh, price to me is more important than interest rate, because if you're trying to do it more as an investment reason, it's all about numbers, right? So if you're speculating that the price of the house is going to be different in a shorter period of time, you might not care what your interest rate is as much because you're not going to be keeping it for very long. On the flip side, if you take a high interest rate loan and you keep that house for a long time, let's just say 10, 12, 15 years or the duration of the loan, I don't care if it's, 15, 20% less than it was before, it's going to cost you more out the door because you're paying that much interest. So it really depends on how long you're keeping your house and what your strategy is there, is how I look at that.
Yeah, I think it also depends on where you're purchasing your home because of property taxes. So if you're purchasing a home in Texas, your property taxes are more expensive than I'm guessing Virginia. What are your property taxes running about?
About $1 for every
Okay. So
$100.
about 1%, about ish.
1%.
1%. So whereas, if you're buying a home in Texas versus, it's double the, because Texas is on average right around that 2%. In certain areas, you can get closer to 3 or 2.5. But for the most part, if your property value is going up, if your home value is going up, so are your property taxes. So keeping that in mind as well. If you're shopping in an area that has a lower property tax, then that's going to, do you better in the long run. But yeah, I agree. It really just depends on the longevity of the loan and how long you plan on staying there and if it's going to be worth it. Or if you plan on taking the home and you're living in it for 5 years, and then instead of selling it, you hold on to it, you take out the money, you put it in the next one, and you save that as an investment property. Well, if you're doing a cash out, you'd still have to mess with the interest rate, but anyway. But if you're not needing to take the cash out of it and you can save that interest rate and cash flow on that property, that's another good situation to be in, to kind of keep that interest low.
You made a good point about the taxes. It's funny because here taxes, they matter, but each city doesn't change that much in taxes. So I kind of grew up in the business not really thinking about that very much because it didn't really make much of a difference, except like 2 cities where it mattered. But even still, like, it didn't matter that much. So it's interesting because that when you mention taxes, honestly, even I think about that, but it doesn't play as much of a factor here, which is just it's interesting to see how different things are in different areas. But anyway.
And then Parush has another question. Is the lower interest rate worth the higher price tag? I would say it levels, we kind of talked about that, how it levels itself out. So you're paying less in interest, but more in housing versus more in interest and less in housing. It's the same. It's the illusion, right? It's the illusion game. So it kind of offsets itself usually. So if interest rates go up, and then housing prices will, usually hover around the same, depending on the demand too, because demand is the other big driving factor, at least here in this market.
And I don't want to get people into trouble here, but one thing about the benefit of having a low interest rate loan and with a higher sales price is that you have more equity to work off of too.
That's true.
So if you're keeping your house for 30 years,
yeah,
you're building up that equity. You can't build the equity by paying interest. So the less interest you pay, the better it is for you. So, again, if you're keeping your house for a while, there are many, many reasons why, to me, it makes sense. If you can afford it, to be willing to go that extra length to just get the house you want, even though it's a little bit higher than even you may have thought last year. Because again, like you said, it's kind of an illusion, so to speak. So.
And then Shashak, oops, there he goes. He said, great answers, thank you. So he's thanking us for that. And then Michelle says 278 Fort Worth. I'm not sure if that's a house number or a zip code.
278,000, maybe?
Oh, maybe. Well, no, she said it was 350.
Oh, yeah.
And then, yeah, it's okay. She'll explain later, I'm sure. He says, I love the equity part. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So. Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about some more questions that we have for you that we thought might be beneficial. This is a question that I get a lot, especially with families that are moving into the area. They usually ask me, can I still find something affordable that has good schools?
Nope. No, it feels tougher, but the reality is that I still think it's very doable, and I'm not just, it kind of is what it is. I mean, again, it's all about price and payment, and yeah. So, because here rentals are as wacky, if not more, than sales. So, if someone says, well, I'd rather just rent to get the right school district that I want, you may have the same problem anyway, if not harder, because there are fewer rentals out there and they go faster than sales. There's no highest and best offer for rentals. You just got to get in there. So, yeah. So the answer to me here is absolutely. I think it's just getting over the hump of knowing that you've got a higher price tag, even though it really is still not exactly, it's not as high as it might feel. But yeah, absolutely. So Virginia Beach, there are some cities that are not known for their school districts, and then there's Virginia Beach and Chesapeake that are. And so you'll see a little bit of a disparity in prices in Norfolk, which has a lot less demand for public schools, and a couple other cities that you can see a disparity, which again has driven the prices up in a lot of areas in Virginia Beach and also Chesapeake. But I don't see much of hasn't been enough to where it's made people that wanted to be in a certain school district not really be able to get in there for the most part.
Yeah, I think that here in Dallas, we do see that separation between good schools and not as good. I'm not going to say bad, because there's really not, like this is the worst school district ever, blah, 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 blah. But it's more or less just, even in Louisville, when we lived in Louisville, there was a big disparity between which high school you were zoned to. So if you were zoned to Flower Mound High School or Marcus High School, since those high schools are rated higher than Louisville High School, you saw a price difference between all the homes that were zoned to Louisville High School versus the other two. And it was a price difference. I want to say back then, and that was a couple of years ago, of at least, $10,000 difference between one versus the other. So you do pay more for, I guess, the quote unquote better schools. But then it really just kind of comes down to what to you is a better school, because it's going to be different for every person. Do you want a big school district? Do you want a small school district? Do you want a school district that has all types of extracurriculars for your kiddos? Do you want a school that has like the top rated teachers in the entire DFW area? So, it just kind of really, what is that? And I would not just look at one specific place when you're looking at schools. And if you use greatschools.org and alshoniche.com, whenever you talk about schools, I use those two. And then there's actually a website, the Texas Education Agency has their own website. You can look at schools and you can look at the data as well. I would also encourage people to go into the school, visit the school, talk to the principals, ask the questions. There are some people that, need a school that works specifically with kids that are special needs. There are some people that need a school that, has the top rated football program for their son who's going to be a football star. There are some people that need ROTC. There's several ROTC programs for high school students sprinkled in throughout DFW. And so it just really depends on what you're looking for in a school. And I think those are serious questions that you need to ask yourself. And, is a 7 out of 10 versus an 8 out of 10, is that really going to be that much of a difference? And I think that sometimes we get so hung up on this A+ rated, A rated, 9 out of 10 versus 5 out of 10. Like, what does that really mean? And we're not looking at all the data. So I think that's super, super important. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell, because I used to teach prior to becoming a real estate agent. That's what my job was to help families, help kids. And so now I'm just helping families in a different way. But yeah.
If I can add to that too, it's funny, talking about ratings and all that stuff. I mean, locals, I think there's a disparity between how people that move somewhere from out of state and locals perceive all this stuff too. Because talk to anybody here, there are a lot of schools that no one from other places that come in talk about because they're not at the top of the list that you see.
Right.
And they all love those schools. Like, oh yeah. And so I didn't grow up knowing what any of these numbers were. And I look, I'm like, that's a 5? Are you serious? It's 5. So it happens all the time. So yeah, I would, if you are moving to a different area, whether you're coming here or you're even going to, well, I mean, if you're anywhere in Texas, but I mean, if you're looking at schools, I don't know, that relying on 2 digits, one from niche and one from great schools, is to me a bit risky, and you might pay more than what you need because you can get a good deal in a different school district because less people are looking at those ratings. So
yeah, I think also you made a good point in asking other community members. I know that there are several moms groups. So if you're a mom, I don't know if there's any dads groups though. But the moms tend to congregate, I guess, a little bit more. Yeah. And so if you're a mom and you're concerned about the schools in an area, maybe join one of those moms groups and ask the question, what are your thoughts on McKinney High School? What are your thoughts on Allen High School? Has anybody had a kid that's been through this or that? Or what is, asking all those questions, and those moms will let you know if you're on target or if you're off target when it comes to that kind of thing. Ratings also too, I noticed on niche.com there, read the ratings, but take it with a grain of salt, because usually those ratings, if they're bad, that's, a situation to where you're not seeing all of the story. It's usually one person that's upset and this is their way to get back at the system or whatever it might be. So sometimes it can be reliable, but other times it can also kind of a tool that you may not want to take a look at. But
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because it's like people rely on them as much as they rely on Amazon ratings. And you're like, well, I wouldn't compare the ratings you see on a school, the emotional charge involved with rating something in a school, to like rating, something like a paper cutter. It's just people are going to be, you don't have to get real upset to like rate a paper cutter terribly, but these are your kids, so you're like more invested. And so anyway, I could see the disparity easily happen. Like all it takes is a few bad ratings and it makes it look a lot worse anyways.
No, and the other thing too is that, depending on, with all of the changes that we had, even within the school system with the pandemic happening, the neat thing is, well, not neat thing, but there's been a lot of shifting and moving around resources and moving around teachers. And teachers have taken on a lot of extra responsibility when it comes to this online learning, trying to get the stuff, out there, trying to get the kids engaged, virtually, digitally, which has been a really stress and strain on a lot of them, and the parents too, because the parents also are trying to help the kids get online and learn as well. So it's not an easy task to undertake by any stretch of the imagination. But I think that we've probably saw a lot of teachers that were going to maybe retire early as a result of the pandemic, because they weren't cut out to handle a Zoom call full of kids. They love that interaction in the school systems. And so I would think that we've probably, I think they've lost staff and they've probably gained new staff in order to try to adapt to the new norms when it comes to these schools. So, a rating is not going to give you the most accurate information, because maybe that bad rating was because of a teacher that's now not there anymore too. So all things to consider. But Sashek has another question for us. Let's see what he's got. He says, in the same price range, is it a good idea to buy an older, bigger house in the Plano area, or would it be better to buy a new but smaller home in McKinney or Frisco? I would say it really just depends on what you're wanting to do with the property. If you're wanting a big home for your family, usually the homes in Plano, most of them were built, they are older in age just in general. You don't see a whole lot of new construction in the Plano area. And then as far as newer and smaller, yes, Frisco prices are higher than I would say both Plano and McKinney. But they have the better of the three district-wise as far as ratings and everything like that goes. So I would say it really just depends. If you're needing more space, get more space. If you're needing this, if you're wanting to, stay in a smaller home, and then a couple, 3 to 5 years later, invest in another home. I mean, people do that all the time.
I wonder if there's an element there of buying an older house and being concerned about.
That's true. Yeah.
An older house, maybe. I don't know.
And that's another concern, as well, with some of these older properties. Are they going to need foundation work? Are they going to need, any type of major repair to their heating and air conditioning system? Because that's another big expense in a lot of these older homes. I would say it really just depends. If you're not a handy person, then maybe a newer home would be a better fit. And it just depends on how much, because when you purchase a home, you also need to set aside money for those unexpected things that happen. So whether it's a big home or a small home, you have to take that into consideration. I think with the older homes, you would want to see how much of it may look pretty, but how old is that hot water heater? How old are the heating and air conditioning units? Does it look like the house is about to fall over? Is the roof in good is the roof in good shape and good condition? So looking at those major things that aren't necessarily what is making the home nice and beautiful are, I think, even more important when you're looking at an older property. When's the last time, if it's an older home, what about the plumbing? What about the electrical system? I mean, you're going to probably need to update that, sooner as opposed to later when it comes to older homes.
One thing that gets me is I get all the time people wanting new houses or newer houses because of the style. And they also like the idea of lower maintenance. They walk into a newer house. Let's say it's built in 2004, which still, I think, at least for standards here, the type of houses that are built here, the floor plans are newer, it feels like, because a lot of the 60s houses here are all boxy, and
yeah,
I like them, but not everybody does. But anyways, so someone walks into a 2003 house and wants all low maintenance, open floor plan, big house. Well, they forget that HVAC system is now 18 years old and it probably hasn't been replaced yet. The roof is 18 years old, hasn't been replaced yet. Water heater is 18 years, so you've got $20,000+ of renovations to your maintenance-free newer house that, so it comes down to like, well, everything's getting older. So even though it's a newer house, you're still about to start putting some money into something. So.
Right. Yeah. And usually the ages of all these items, your home inspector will have that readily available. So kind of what's going to be coming up next on your list, to kind of what to save up for if you're going to continue past that option period or that contingency period.
Yeah.
I don't know what your fancy name for it is there.
Contingency period. Yeah. Home inspection. Yeah.
Yeah. And Michelle, she was trying to give us some clarity. She said, or you could get a cheaper house with a lower interest rate in 15 or 20 year financing. Yes, you can. Cheaper house with lower interest rate.
You mean
so instead of spending a whole bunch of money,
lower payment maybe? A cheaper house.
Cheaper house, lower interest rate.
Interesting. Oh, because it's a cheaper, because the payment will be higher with a 15 years, so you're getting a cheaper house to offset that.
Yes, your payment. Yeah, because your payment will be higher on a 15 or 20-year note versus 30-year. But yeah, I think that's what she's referring to. I think she was trying to help. She might be trying to help Sashek a little bit.
Oh, right. She
I
said
think
that's
so.
the property tax, the 278 Fort Worth.
Yeah, the 2.78%.
Wow.
Yeah, I bet she was, because new construction can get very high. So new construction here in Dallas, we have extra taxes in certain areas. They're called MUDs, PIDs, and PUDs, and it stands for the Municipal Utilities District or Principal Utilities District, or Anyway, they're a utilities district virtually, to where over the course you pay an extra tax at the end of the year. So you'll have your tax assessment that you pay at the end of the year, but then you also have an additional tax just for those residents that live in that community will pay that additional tax. So it could, cause your interest rate on your home, your dream home that you're wanting, to be even more. Usually they say if a home buyer can't qualify for something in the MUD, they'll say they got stuck in the mud because they can't afford it because their payment's too high because of the additional height in the interest rate due to that community being in a mud pit or a PUD. Yeah.
Not much mud here, I guess. But.
No, y'all must handle that differently in Virginia when it comes to developing a new community. But you said you haven't seen a lot of new construction anyway.
Well, I say that, it's just hard to get it. It exists. It's just, everything's taking longer, and it's hard to snatch up. And so, yeah, it was not to say that there isn't much. It's just that it's become the type of people that I often work with don't have the time to wait a year to get some, and it's there. It's just not often prudent to wait that long. Though there are some benefits to it here. You're not going to be overbidding or not overbidding, but you're not bidding with anybody else. You're just getting the prices for what it is, which is a huge benefit in this market right now. But again,
it is what it is. You have to be. It's a waiting game. You have to be patient for that.
Yeah. If you want new construction, it's a mixture of being patient and also being ready to act way early, and being ready to wait, 8 months, because it's going to take a while to get your house built, or longer, 9 months, 12 months, whatever. But yeah, but I think that could change. We've been talking about this back here. Is I was expecting inventory to come up just a little bit last week or so, in February, and it really hasn't here. And so I'm seeing what could be the beginning of like last year, when December was busy because so many people were not able to get houses in September, October, and November.
Kind of backlogged on buyers here.
Yeah, even more so. People that like waited last year and like, well, I'll just get something this year.
Yeah.
Now they're coming in. So people just aren't selling. They're just afraid to be stuck.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. So new construction might be more of a thing this year. I might encourage people.
Here in our area, it really is. I think new construction, and there are some areas that don't have the MUD, the PID, and the PUD, so you don't have that extra tax. So it doesn't apply to every new construction. But I am noticing that with new construction, you usually get a smaller lot, so you're not getting as big of a yard. That's the trade-off that you make for a newer home, smaller yard. There are certain communities that will have larger lots, like a quarter of an acre or half an acre, even an acre plus in certain communities. It just really depends. But usually those communities start at like the $500,000 marker, if you're wanting to get into new construction with some sort of a yard here in the North Dallas area. And then the other thing too that we're noticing is that every builder is going to be different on how quickly they can build it. Some builders will do like track building. So like D.R. Horton will build like, just keep building and building and building. And then they'll be like, okay, well, we've got 3 in this model that's going to be ready in March. And then the next 3 are going to be ready in, 3 months later. So March, April, June. And then the next 3 are going to be ready in, so they'll have like spurts of inventory as they continue to build. That's with D.R. Horton. And that's a builder, even though they're all across the United States, they are more cookie cutter whenever they build. So they're not going to do a whole lot of custom, or they're not going to do any customization actually. Because I've asked one time, I said, can they change this or that? And like, nope. I was like, oh, okay.
Faucet goes there.
They're like, they can rip up the new carpet and put in hardwoods later. I'm like, okay. Whatever.
Sounds like the bullet. Yeah. We don't have them here. Horton, yeah. D.L. Horton, you said?
D.R. Horton.
D.R. Horton, yeah, we don't have them here.
Really? Okay.
You have Ryan?
Do we have what?
Ryan Homes?
We don't have Ryan Homes.
Okay.
Yeah. We have, and then there are other builders that'll have like First Texas, which is obviously here in Texas. You can customize that out the wazoo. You can change like architectural features. You can add rooms upstairs. You can add bathrooms, half bathrooms. So they're more of a custom builder to where you're still getting like a cookie cutter essentially, because they have so many, designs and plans, but you're able to take that and to customize it, I think a little bit more, giving you more of a custom feel to your new home versus having to go and pay, a custom home builder to draw up the plans. And
Yes.
That's just way more expensive if you're looking to do something like that. So it kind of gives you affordability with that customization. And then there's some that are in between. They're kind of not D.R. Horton, but they're not that First Texas completely customizable. They're like, well, you can customize this and this, but these are our packages that we have. We've already set out to design, this, and this, and you can choose from one of our packages. So it's still cookie cutter, but you can add some customization to your whatever package you decide to go with. So, that's kind of how most builders are. So it can take anywhere, and sometimes they'll have spec homes too. So they'll build a couple of homes and then they'll sell those homes. Now every builder is going to be different. I had one builder that said, well, we have, we have 35 lots left and we have 63 people on the wait list. So let me know if you want to be on the wait list for appointments to actually go sign contracts. Wow. And if someone, missed their appointment or lost their appointment, they just lost out on a property essentially. And that's how one community was handling that. Others will say it's more of a first come, first serve type thing. Get it while you can, essentially. I've seen people actually go into multiples or try to bid out other people for like one specific lot or one specific spec home that's already built as well. So they just can't keep up with the demand. They can't. And lumber costs have gone up. And then the price increases too with builders. It's gotten pretty crazy. There was one person I was talking to in Heath, which is just outside of Dallas and close to the Rockwall area. And he said, I got a phone call from my boss on Monday and we just raised the price. And I wouldn't be surprised if I got another phone call from him on Wednesday to raise it again. And I'm going, oh my God. Like, how much are you raising?
Killing me.
$1,000 increments or 500? Like, what are we doing?
Oh man
is right. So it's pretty crazy with builders, and they, because they're going so quickly, their websites aren't as up to date as they normally would be. So it's just so super hard trying to scour and weed through all of the mess that is new construction and figure out who's still building a community, which one's closing out, which one's starting, so that you can get into hopefully the next big thing.
So are you having a lot of conversations with people about specifically new construction? Because it is interesting, because what you're talking about the conversations don't go that way very much. And it's interesting. So you have a lot of this kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people are interested in new construction just because, like the low maintenance aspect
Yeah.
of it. So they're wanting to move into a new home. They don't want to have to mess with the age of the hot water heater. They or compete with other people too. I think that's the other big thing. They don't want to have to compete. And a lot of people enjoy these master plan communities that we have here we have them in McKinney, we have them in Prosper, we have them in Frisco. They're kind of all sprinkled in. And what they do is you have all these community events, you have community common use areas, facilities. It could be a gym, it could be an aquatic center, it could be something that everyone in the community kind of is paying for, right?
Yeah.
That you're all able to benefit from. And there's lots of events to actually gain community within those master planned areas.
So here, even the question is affordable new construction available here. I was about to say no, because here the conversation is if you want a house for 400,000, if you want new construction, you're going to give up a lot to get it. You either want a new house or you're going to get new house, like you said, little lot or no lot,
Yeah.
smaller,
Yeah.
often attached. It's not detached. Um, Depends on the city, but even still, or you're going to get here, there are a lot of infill, like where you've got pre-existing neighborhoods with a vacant lot in there. Builder will buy the lot, put a new house in there. Happens. That's the most affordable way to get a new house here.
Mm.
Um, so, and I'm saying that meaning affordable here for a new construction house that's in a pre-existing neighborhood. You can get them as low as like under 300,
Oh,
but
wow.
not really in high desirable areas.
Okay.
And even to get something in a neighborhood that you might like an older neighborhood, but new house in that is still going to be over 400,000 often. And a neighborhood, like a planned development, anything under 450 is like almost unheard of now. So
Wow.
that's just starting out. So you're easily into five and higher. So that like the sweet spot around here is 350 to 450, sometimes higher, but it's you are sacrificing a ton if you want a new house
Hmm.
here as far as like living environment. You must really want the new floors and the new
The new HVAC and the new all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think, and they've actually done that in a couple of areas here, to where you have lots that are for sale and they'll build on it. Very popular thing to do in downtown McKinney, because the zoning requirements are very loose in certain parts of downtown McKinney. So you see a lot of builders that will purchase a lot and then build on it and then resell that property. So that's been popular, but the lots have gotten so expensive that it's so hard the means don't justify the ends when it comes to buying like $100,000 lot that you can only build so much house on in McKinney. And then they're also doing that, I think, further outside of town. So when you get more of like a rural setting, there are lots that you could try to swoop up and grab that way and either build your own or have someone or build your own home, or that land developers will take a look at that. And then in Seagaville, it's very, very popular. It's an area south of Dallas, close to where I actually grew up. They were taking, like you said, these older neighborhoods and buying up certain lots, and then a builder would just build one, maybe two, maybe three homes.
oh,
You get a new home, but it's maybe not in the most desirable, area or part of town. But it is what it is. I mean, you still got a new home. So I
there's
see
one
what you
neighborhood here called Norfolk Highlands that is in Chesapeake, ironically, and it is like the perfect neighborhood for this. And it's like in 2005, 6, 7, 8, and even up to now, but like in the mid 2000s, this was so popular here where there were about 5 builders that bought up all these lots, knocked over some small, little tiny 2-bedroom houses, and then you see boop, 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 little shotgun houses all in the neighborhood. And then over the last 15 years, it's half of the houses now are like that. So it's almost like a planned subdivision over 15 years by accident.
Yeah, and the in the historic district, close to where downtown McKinney is, they do have. You're not required to build like a historical looking style home that just has, because most of our homes here in Texas are brick. We don't have a whole lot of just like the wood siding or even plastic siding. We have, it's mainly brick, but in the historic district, you will see homes that are designed to match some of the other older historic homes in that neighborhood. So that's kind of neat to see too.
Cool. Yeah. I noticed Randy's got
Randy's got some stuff here. He said, I think there are 4 houses that came on the market this week in Arlington. Is the buying market so crazy in every price range? Are people overbidding on everything from 200 to 600? How are people affording this? So the answer is yes, they are overbidding up to $1 million plus. We've seen properties, even the luxury market, I think, is down I think we have like 2.5 months of inventory in our luxury market just here in Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, and that's really, really low because those homes usually sit for years, a long time.
Wow.
Because there wasn't a high demand. Well, with the immigration of people that have more money, that have higher paying jobs, relocating here to Texas and buying $1 million property they can do, so we'll just blame it on California, right?
Yeah, right. So interesting. So to that point, Randy was asking, here, I think you can do really well under 3 if you have just, and I'm not belittling this amount of money. I'm just saying, like, if you just have about $10,000 to $15,000 more than another person, you can offer 10 over ask or 10 more over ask or 5 more over ask and be willing to guarantee that extra difference just as that insurance policy. Mm-hmm. And again, the idea of how people affording this, well, again, the payment between $265 and $275 is like $50 right now. Yeah. That's not as much the thing. It's as much as it is the guarantee of the difference if the appraisal doesn't happen here. So a lot of people that are in the lower price ranges don't have as much reserves to just throw at a house. Yeah. But the ones that do can do really well. So if you can go, if it's 265, again, in this market, I'm saying this, but 265 and you offer 281 and you can guarantee the difference, you are in really good, you're strong. Yeah. And, but again, in this market also, appraisals are starting to creep up. So I'm having several people that offered way over ask in various price ranges. And not only are the appraisals coming back at the higher number, but they're actually going over our aggressive offer number. So the guarantee number.
Same here. I think we offered on one home, I think it was 7,000 over, but we decided to waive the appraisal and we actually came out ahead on in the end. Like we came out ahead, I think by a couple $1,000s even.
Yeah. So now it's basically insurance policy you didn't have to use. So that's a big deal. And so again, you are paying a higher number. How are people affording this? Well, again, they can afford $80 maybe a difference, but it just really works out well when you have that extra cash. Just be willing to use it if you have to. And oftentimes now you may not have to.
Yeah, because the appraisals. And I talked to a lender and a couple of appraisers here in the area, and they've been telling me that they really haven't seen any appraisals go under what the people are offering. So, and I believe it. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen, equity in homes that were underpriced or whatever the situation might have been, because the market is hot and everybody's getting multiple offers. And especially if it's within like a couple, like $5,000 to $10,000 difference, that appraiser could be like, yeah, I can see, maybe 5 or 10 grand more. They had 20 offers, so I can see that extra. That's that it doesn't surprise me. I think he said the lender that I recently talked to said the only appraisals that were coming in lower were from California.
Oh wow.
And I was like, oh, stinks to be in California. I'm sorry, I'm picking on Californians.
Hard.
There could be some listening, so I apologize if you're in California, But okay, so I think we got all the questions, and it's 7:34. So I think we're gonna wrap it up and tie a bow on it. So
Okay.
let me see if I can get rid of these. Got all these things floating around. Okay, comments. Let me remove the comment. Okay, now I got to remove the banner. There we go. All right, so we'll end it here. We thank you guys so much for watching, for asking all the questions. We really love the engagement and the interaction. Feel free if you have any questions about the Dallas area, or if you're considering Virginia Beach, or maybe an investment property in Virginia Beach, if you need a vacation rental over there. Sam is your man, and we'll see you everybody on the next one.